We're learning Perek Beis Halacha Daled, Hilchos Megillah. Rambam says, "Hoisek suva targum oibalosh nacheres." It was written with a translation or any other language. Miloshen zagoyim lo yotzi dechavosi b'krioso. You're not yotze if you read it. Ela amaki oise loshen. Only if you know that loshen. Now let's go down to the Peirush. It was written even Aramaic and except for Loshen of Greek, as we mentioned earlier, even if you don't understand it, and it has to be written in that language. However, if it was written Eksav Ivri, and you read it Aramaic, even to Aramaic you're not Yotze, because he's reading it Bal Peh. Since he's not Yotze, his own obligation, therefore, HaKoyer L'Yotze HaShemea Mimenu. Kivin Shel Yotze Yidei Choyvosoi. The Maggid Mishnah cites the Mishnah in Megillah, 17a. If you read it in the language of Aramaic or any other language, you're not Yotze. You can read it to people that don't understand, or people that have a different language in their language. Rashi says, Le'azis know that is any language that's not Lashon HaKodesh. Not Hebrew. The Maggid Mishnah cites, even if he knows Hebrew, as long as he knows English, he can do it when he understands that language. And for the Rambam, it would seem the same as well. In the Mishnah, the Rajba and the Ramban, we're talking here about the Megillah alone. The name of the Yerushalmi, as somebody who knows another language, and he knows as well Hebrew. What's the din if he's Yotzei? Can he fulfill the obligation of others who only know other languages? He's not motzi them. As it says, if he's not obligated in that language, then he can't be motzi others. So it seems that somebody who knows Ashurit, if he knows Hebrew and he knows another language, he can't be yotze the other language. The Kesef Mishnah brings from the Rivosh. The Ran explains the Yerushalmi is going according to the opinion that somebody who knows both foreign language and Hebrew, if he wants to read in a foreign language, he's Yotze, and that's the way the Rambam will learn it, and therefore you can't learn from the Yerushalmi, because he learns the Yerushalmi differently than what we have. Now, the Rambam continues, it has to be written in that language. The Kesef Mishnah says that it doesn't mean there's two conditions required here. One, written in the foreign language. Two, that it's written in the writing of that language. Meaning, if there's some sort of other, for example, if you write Greek with English letters, or you write Chinese with English letters, and you understand Chinese, would it be Yotze? It has to be written in that language, only that it shouldn't be considered he's reading it orally. But when it's written in a language, even though it's the letters that are used are not the language of that language, it's considered written, it's be read from the written, and therefore you would fulfill your obligations. And he infers from what the Rambam says, it will be written in a language of Hebrew, and he read it Aramaic and he translated it into Aramaic to somebody who understands Aramaic, you would not fulfill his obligation, because it's like reading it orally, meaning that it's written. That means that if it would be written in Aramaic, even though it's written with Hebrew letters, right? Then he doesn't care what the language the letters are. He just the importance is it has to be read from something that is written. We're going to Samach Beis at the bottom of the page. The Torah Paskins, the Halacha, the Lashon HaKodesh, you can be Yotze even though you don't understand. Beis Yosef, cites the Mishnah. He also quotes the Gemara that if he doesn't understand what you're saying, you're not yoitzin. He explains that even women in Amei Oretz, somebody who is ignoramus, don't understand it, you're yoitzin. Ravina adds that they don't know that you can't translate in other languages today, and yotzim. In other words, even though in Hebrew we don't understand what it means, we have no translation of these words, ashtronim, bnei hamochim, you still fulfill your obligation because it's a mitzvah of reading, is to tell you the nes, and therefore the yotzim, because they were positions, whatever they were, it doesn't matter as long as we use the wording that was used in the Megillah. We're going to turn the page. The Torah brings from Rabbi Ammon that when the Rambam, just like the Rambam, that Greek is kosher for everyone. We're not talking about Greek. We're talking about other languages like English, etc. If you understand it, the Beis Yosef adds that even though you don't understand Greek, you could be yoitzer. If somebody would read it in Greek and could read Greek, and he cites the Rav and Shmuel of that opinion, where the Rosh and the Riv write didn't bring Rav and Shmuel, even though there's no one who disagrees with them. The Riv explains that everything was going according to Rav Shimon Gamliel, and nobody agreed, and the halacha is not like Rav Shimon Gamliel. Therefore, the halacha is not like Rav and Shmuel, and therefore that you could read it in Greek, but we don't read it in Greek. The Rambam opinions according to Rav Shmuel, like we find in Hilchos Tefillin, you don't write Tefillin mezuzahs only in Hebrew, and they permitted it to write other svarim in Greek, and that Greek is no longer known today. And even though people speak Greek, it's not the same Greek. Therefore, you don't write anything. Tefillin, mezuzah, sefer Torah only in Ksav Ashuras. He explains in Megillah, he writes the words of Rav Shmuel to tell us that the halacha is like them, technically. And the Rambam relies, when he writes in Hilchos Tefillin, that Greek is forgotten from the world today, and it doesn't pay to read it in Greek for sure. Why, rather than Hebrew, what are we going to gain from that? Therefore, the Rif left out the words of Rav Shmuel. He wrote the brisa of Greek for Greeks, that for people from Greece, their language today, if they wrote it, if the Megillah was written in their language, they would be yoitze, they would fulfill their obligation because they understand Greek. Today, present day Greek. Just like present day English or present day Spanish. Shulchan Aruch in 690 codifies the halacha. If you read Megillah orally, you're not yoitze. If someone who does not understand Hebrew, he understands another language, and he hears it in Lashon HaKodesh, and it's written in Lashon HaKodesh, and written with the aleph beis that we use, the alphabet that we use, aleph beis, even though he doesn't know what they're saying, yoitze. Mishnah Berurah explains, even someone who understands Hebrew doesn't understand the wording translations we said before of Achashtonim Bnei Hamochim, and you still yoitze, you still fulfill it because Kriya of the Megillah is to make known the Nes of Purim, and all the words are necessary, and even yoitze lechatchila to begin with. Therefore, women and ignoramuses, even though they don't understand every word, but they don't understand most of it, the yoitze. And the Pri Megadim explains every Yirei Shamayim, he should have a Megillah Sheira in his hand and read from it word for word, silently so, because otherwise you won't hear the Bal Korah, because you can't necessarily hear everything from the Shliach Tzibur. especially when people are making a lot of noise when the word Haman is read. Now, the Mechaber continues. It was written in a different language. From the Goyish languages, Yoitze, only those who understand that language. But it was written in Hebrew, and he read it, he translated it. In other words, he was reading the Hebrew and simultaneously translating it into Aramaic. You would not fulfill your obligation because that's considered oral translation. And since he's not Yotze, HaKoiri Rechavosoi, his obligation, the person who heard from him is not Yotze. The Ramah adds that you don't have to be choishesh in which language it's written. It doesn't matter what alphabet it's written in. Even so, you could write technically the whole Megillah, I guess, in the ABC and still be Yoitze. I wouldn't advise it though. You'd have to write it on cloth, most probably. The Mechaber concludes. So he knows a foreign language and he knows Hebrew as well. He cannot fulfill his obligation with a foreign language, and the others will say he can. The Ramah adds, if it's written in two languages, what happens if half of it's written in Hebrew and half of it's written in a different language? One ever understands it would fulfill his obligation. If the part that's written in a different language and part is written in a second language, the Mishnah Berurah adds that it's not correct to be written in two languages. The Halacha adds there are those who codify the Halacha that you can't read some of the languages in a different language. And the source would be 9a in Megillah. And the Ritva wants to say that if some of the words you translated were written not in Hebrew, but in the translated word of Hebrew, would be kosher. But today we don't have that problem. We have the Megillahs that are written, and it's more or less, Baruch Hashem, we're able to have the Megillahs, and we should be yoytze the Mikveh Megillah.